So, hi everyone. Thanks a lot for having me or us actually. My name is Andrej, and I'll be speaking today about how should open telemetry attributes, or how could open telemetry attributes be handled, resource attributes be handled in Prometheus. So, yeah, I just now have to find the cursor. Nice. So this is a presentation of an outcome of Linux Foundation mentorship project. So there are 4 of us involved. The main person, most important one, and who should get the main spotlight today is Victoria Nduka. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here today, so I will play her part of a presentation as a recording. Yeah. So Victoria was the mentee in this project, and then there were 3 of us mentors. Arthur, you all know Arthur. Arthur is a Prometheus maintainer, and also Grafana software engineer. Then there is Amy, also from Grafana, a product designer, and me from Grafana, user researcher. Some quick background. Why did we decide to look into this topic? Arthur was talking about this, I think, last year at KubeCon, and also he was getting some indirect feedback overall from different people that resource attributes from OpenTelemetry are the way how they are handled in Prometheus can be problematic for some users. So when we were coming up with the topic for the mentorship, we decided to look into this problem. And before I move forward, I know that resource attributes were mentioned many times already, but I'll try to explain for folks who might not know how they work. So resource attributes are basically something like Prometheus labels that are sent from, resource attributes are parameters of resources in OTel, and when they are stored in Prometheus, they are basically Prometheus labels. So that's quite clear. When it becomes problematic is when we talk about the instrumentation. So with Prometheus, you have to instrument things manually, and then there is, you kind of understand what are you storing and what are you sending. With OpenTelemetry and with the automatic instrumentation, people can start getting a whole lot of attributes that they might see for the first time, and it might be causing problems. And yeah, in this project, we wanted to cover 3 goals, 3 research goals. First one was to understand how engineers currently handle OpenTelemetry resource attributes in Prometheus. Then what are the pain points that they are having, and with the current approach. And the last thing is what are their expectations, and what could the Prometheus and OpenTelemetry community do to make their lives easier. And now I will give words to Victoria, and hopefully it will work. Okay. Bust. Sorry?
Maybe it's down here when you look at the bottom left behind the slide thingies.
Behind the slide.
Maybe you can just try it.
I'm a user experience designer, learning to become a cloud engineer.
So let me
You can learn more about me and my work on my introduced for setting up the presentation. Thank you, Andrej, for setting up the presentation. I assume Andrej already introduced me at the beginning, but I'm just going to briefly introduce myself. I am Victoria Nduka. I'm a user experience designer, learning to become a cloud engineer. You can learn more about me and my work on my website, victorianduka.com. I also want to take this time to say that I am bummed that I'm not able to present this talk in person. Getting a visa proved to be harder than I thought, so here we are. Now to the research. We started off speaking to stakeholders from both sides of the project so that we understand the historical context and evolution of both projects involved, and to gauge how much change each project was open to based on the outcomes of this research. And we spoke to a couple of interesting folks um, on the, I'm sure some of them are at this event. Hi, again. On the Prometheus side, we spoke to Dion, Julius, and Richie. Thanks again for indulging us. And on the OTel side, we had Austin, Josh, and Jurasi. So I will talk more about what we learned from these interviews later on in this talk. But for now, the actual user experiences. We heard from 70 users in total, 7 interviewees, and 63 survey respondents about their experience working with OTL resource attributes in Prometheus. The interviews helped us to explore the user experiences and perspectives in detail, and the survey allowed us to identify some of the trends and patterns that we observed in the interviews. So, what did we learn from these conversations? Now, after analyzing the data and information we got from the interviews and the survey, we learned some really interesting things. As Andre has already mentioned, one of our research goals is or was to understand how engineers currently use open telemetry resource attributes in Prometheus. So, what does their actual workflow look like? And what we found is that there are 4 main workflows that really stood out.
Now for a moment, because in the best spirit and tradition of live video presentations and any kind of live demos, just before this talk, like literally 10 or 15 minutes ago, we learned that from out of those 4 approaches, actually one of them is not working. Arf was the person who explained to us. We did this. We got this wrong when talking to the users, but the rest should be okay. So yeah, thanks Arf. We actually published it in a blog, like 3 different blog posts. We never got any feedback from anyone before, but yeah, now 5 minutes before the presentation, that's the right time. So yeah, but yeah, that's great. Thanks for the feedback. So, and I'll now let Victoria continue.
Attribute promotion is another approach, and a more selective approach compared to the complete mapping that we earlier discussed. So instead of converting everything, most users choose specific resource attributes, and it's usually the ones that they know they will need for pairing and filtering, and they promote those ones to be converted to Prometheus labels. Now, the problem with this is that you have to decide beforehand or upfront what you want to promote, and changes are resource intensive. We talk about the challenges with this approach later on. So with this approach, users have to be really intentional and strategic with what becomes label, because they are trying to balance having the metadata that they need while also avoiding some of the overhead that comes with having to make labels. And then there's the target info approach. It's quite different from the other approaches that we discussed. With target info, users store their resource attributes as target metadata. So instead of all those resource attributes coming from open telemetry that you ordinarily would have converted or transferred to the widgets as labels, you now have them in a single metric called the target info. So now when you do, and then your actual metrics are just clean. So when you query with resource attributes, you join the target info metric with the actual metrics using Prometheus, using PromQL. So it sounds, or it is actually a more efficient approach in many ways, because the metadata is stored once per target, and not repeated across every time series. And then users need to query with that information. Like when users need to query with that information, you just join it at the query time using PromQL. So you get access to the resource attribute data when you need it, but without the cardinality explosion that can come from adding labels to every. But from our conversation with users, this seems to be the least preferred approach. because of the complex join syntax that most users struggle with. Then manual attributes injection, or what I call manual attribute injection. So some users that interviewed, they mentioned that what they usually do is they add resource attributes label in resource level attributes as part of the Prometheus scrape target definition. So rather than relying on the resource attributes that come directly from OpenTelemetry. So these are the 4 main workflows that we identified. And what's interesting is that each of these approaches exists because users are trying to solve different problems or work within different constraints, and that's specific to their circumstance or use case. Yeah, like I mentioned, BN shared this talk. OTel resource attributes from the Prometheus perspective. It's a really successful read, and I think it's worth mentioning. He does a good job of explaining the various approaches to having resource attributes that I've just discussed, and addresses the misconceptions around cardinality expression. So if you can stand the QR code on the screen to take you to the doc and share your thoughts here as a comments. So we've seen the approaches that users take to handle their resource attributes coming from OTel. And by now it should already be obvious that each approach there, that for each approach, there seems to be a drawback. So in the survey we conducted, we asked users how satisfied are they or were they with the current distribution between OTel resource attributes and Prometheus. And as you can see from the chat, the majority of people, that's about 43%, rated their satisfaction right in the middle. That's at a 3. This suggests that while the integration isn't terrible, it is also not great. People are kind of neutral about their stand. What's also more telling is that we see more dissatisfaction than satisfaction. So if you look at the lower end, that's to the left of the chart or the graph, we have about 30% of respondents rating it 1 or 2, meaning that they are not happy with how things are currently. On the flip side, only about 27% rated it 4 or 5, indicating that they are satisfied. So when we add this all up, roughly a third of the users are frustrated with the current state of integration, while less than a third are actually happy with it. So that middle group, the large bar, they are the ones using the fence, probably getting by, but hoping that or wishing that things look better. This really highlights that there's significant room for improvements in how these two systems work together. So now let's talk about the pain points, because our second research goal was to identify challenges users are facing with these workflows. And we found several significant issues. One of the biggest pain points is around complex joins. When users rely on target info to assess their resource attributes, they have to write PromQL queries with joins. And a sizable percentage of our respondents told us that they find these queries challenging. Writing these queries, like the joins are a lot more complexity to what should sometimes be straightforward queries, as you can see in the charts. Just about 8% of the respondents with complex joins as not challenging. So almost 90%. Almost 90% rated as challenging. Another main pain points we identified is around manually managing attributes promotion. Some of the challenges users pointed out with this is that, one, they have to decide upfront which attributes to promote. They need to predict what they will need for pairing before they actually start pairing, which isn't always straightforward, especially in complex evolving systems. Second, any changes to the promotion is resource intensive. So you can't just flip a switch and everything works. It often requires configuration changes on coordination across teams. It can be a hassle. And on top of that, and this one is particularly tricky, new attributes only affect new data. So when you add new attributes to your promotion list, they only apply to the new data going forward. Your historical data does not have those attributes as does, which creates inconsistency in your time series. So you end up with queries that work differently depending on whether you're looking at recent data or historical data. And that can be really frustrating when you're trying to troubleshoot issues or analyze trends over time. And the third pain point that came up repeatedly is documentation gaps. A majority of users we surveyed reported challenges with the current documentation around resource attributes and how they work with Prometheus. Looking at the charts here, you can see that about 44%, the actual number is 25 respondents. They found documentation gaps very challenging, and the same number rated as slightly challenging. So that's about 80% of respondents saying that they find they have an issue with the docs. That is a significant number, and it tells us that people are struggling to find clear guidance on best practices and implementation details and all that stuff. So this sentiment about the docs being a problem was equally reinforced in our interviews as well. Participants specifically mentioned wanting better documentation and resource attributes. So, and this complaint about documentation is not just specific to Prometheus. The OTel community has some work to do also with this regard. And now our third research goal was to understand user expectations. How do people actually expect resource attributes to work in Prometheus? And what we found here is really enlightening because it should yield some fundamental mismatches between user mental models and how these currently work. We discovered that users fundamentally do not distinguish between resource attributes and machine attributes. They feel at the same thing. We also found that users expect resource attributes to be directly queryable without any special syntax. So the joins are complex, they don't want to do that. But currently the joins make actions, simple actions, a lot more complicated than the users intuitively expect. And it's a big part of why you're seeing so much friction. Users also want flexibility. They ideally would rather not to have to be confronted with the dilemma of choosing which resource attributes to promote. They would prefer if Prometheus had a more efficient way of deciding for them. So some kind of mechanism that figures out what is relevant to the user to promote and what is not relevant to not promote based on their actual usage patterns. And finally, users expect to easily filter and aggregate their metrics by resource attributes. So in the survey, 76 of respondents rated filtering by resource attributes as very important, and 68% rated it aggregation based on resource attributes also as very important. So we are talking about core fundamental use cases here. These are everyday operations that people expect to be straightforward, but the current workflows make them kind of harder than it should be. Right. I said I was going to talk about the stakeholder strategies later on, so the time has finally come for that. And from my conversation with the stakeholders, we learned a couple of things. One is that Prometheus and OTel were built on fundamentally different philosophical and technical foundations. OTel comes from the angle of you need to handle everything, metrics, logs, traces, all of it. We can't predict what people need, so let's just capture it all and let them figure it out later. Prometheus, on the other hand, is more like, let's be really good at one thing, metrics, time series metrics. Let's be efficient. So naturally, there was bound to be mismatches when the user base began to intersect. We also learned that the projects didn't communicate with each other from the beginning, and this lack of early collaboration may have led to the integration issues that exist today. But on the bright side, the general support for improving UX around resource attributes. Both project stakeholders understand that there is need for the two communities to collaborate if things are to work well for the users. But there is a caveat. Prometheus stakeholders express a strong preference for Prometheus to learn focus on metrics and any changes to the project should not alienate Prometheus native users, should not alienate the existing Prometheus users who use just Prometheus for their observability needs. So bottom line is that there is a recognition that both systems serve important but different needs, and both projects just need to work together and find the right balance. At this point, I am going to hand over to Andre to cover the recommendations that we have for both communities. Thanks again for having me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the events. Andre, over to you.
Okay, so yeah, and now back to me. So I'll just sum up, and especially the recommendations that Victoria already partially mentioned. So the first recommendation is that there are already a bunch of solutions, and I know that they were even mentioned during this event, and it's just about implementing them and making sure they get to Prometheus. We heard about eliminating join complexity through making native resource attributes query support, then speeding up attribute promotion by more intelligent attribute selection with cardinality awareness, and also a couple of concepts that are not yet in Prometheus could help a lot with the resource attributes and yeah, the user experience of resource attributes usage. That's the first thing. So that's the product part. Then the second part is a bit different, or the second recommendation. It's about improving documentation on both Prometheus and OTel. As you could see, Prometheus, we got a lot of feedback about both Prometheus and OTel documentation, and it seems that there is a lot of potential for improvement. Here, I will talk more about the OpenTelemetry part. So OpenTelemetry also has a way how to more efficiently handle resource attributes, but in their documentation, there is really just one paragraph covering that and not more. So it would be great if it would be expanded. And also related to Bjorn's talk, when he talked about how OpenTelemetry folks explain observability, that it is as if you are looking at the sky through the telescope. So do you know how this functionality around resource attributes is called in OpenTelemetry? No, it's called telescoping. So yeah, OTel folks use quite ambiguous names sometimes. So there is a lot of space for improvement there for sure. The next thing is a little broader. It's about aligning both of these systems on like more philosophical level. For example, what we heard mostly from the stakeholders is that they see OTel as since it comes from the traces background compared to Prometheus that is from the metrics background, they see it more as an exploratory tool. So it might be, and they see OTel metrics and the way how OTel metrics are structured better for these exploration use cases. So another thing that we would like to recommend is to think about how Prometheus could get better in the exploration use cases. And I would like to mention there's a link to a project that Arthur and Amy are already running with their mentee Anna, where she's working on designing wireframes for exploration use cases in Prometheus. And the last thing, again, as Victoria already mentioned briefly, the most important thing perhaps is the communication, that these communities don't live apart from each other, but they talk to each other and they understand how both system works and they can make them work in a synergy. At the end of the day, it's both of them are CNCF projects, so it would be great if they synergized more. Yeah, I like the word synergy. That's roughly it. Just 2 more slides. LFX mentorship. We would like to give a shout out to this program. All of us mentors, and I'm pretty sure that Victoria as well. We are all very passionate about this. We think it's a great way for CNCF projects or like Linux Foundation projects in general to get new people in and to get some more work done in perhaps a little bit different way. It's great for mentees. There are a lot of benefits, but there are also a lot of benefits for mentors. I would like to highlight those. So you get extra pair of hands, extra folks to work on stuff that maybe there was never like time to work on them. These folks are usually very motivated and very excited to contribute. And last but not least, for many of them, it's not just 3 months of the mentorship and then they are gone, but they continue to contribute to the community even after the mentorship is done. So yeah, we think it's an awesome project. And the last one, yeah, Victoria is a good example of a mentee who continues to contribute. So currently, she is helping with Prometheus blog, and she's trying to get it, make it a bit more lively to publish more posts. So I would like to ask you all, like, if you have any topic that you would like to write about, please reach out to Victoria, and I'm sure she'll find a way for you to get to the Prometheus blog. And the last thing, yeah, Victoria is also looking for a job. So if you have any positions opened, feel free to reach out to her. I'm sure she would be very, very happy. So yeah, once again, thank you all very much for having us, and that's it.
Thank you, Victoria and Andrej. Questions?
I just wanted to ask whether you're aware of the info PromQL function, because that is actually supposed to make joins with target info easy.
Yeah, I think that was another thing that we discussed just today. Maybe some of the participants mentioned it. I'm not 100% sure, but it's for sure not something that is like widely adopted yet, and we haven't had like a whole lot of feedback about it.
Okay, yeah, because I would kind of be interested in hearing the users' feedback on that, since overwhelmingly found traditional joins very difficult.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that actually, when it comes to resource attribute promotion, there is actually a second mode where you promote all of them.
Oh, good. So
maybe there was some confusion around that.
Yes, maybe. Yeah, perhaps.
I just wanted to continue the answer. So the research was focused on users, and I think like Prometheus maintainers and Prometheus power users, we all know the info function, but on the user perspective, there is like lack of documentation, is not well advertised, and mostly nobody knew about it. So that was the problem.
Yeah, I guess like that's a good question. How do we raise awareness?
Yeah. Documentation. One of the options, of course.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Anyone else? Question? No? Okay. Then a statement.
Yes. Not a question. So as Andrej said, we are continuing this research with more mentorships. We're currently working on the wireframes, trying to come up with a new UI idea. No promises that this ever makes to Prometheus, but we are trying. So if you're if you're an OTel user and you're storing OTel metrics in Prometheus, we would love to get you on board in the workshop. We need only 1 hour of your time. And we are doing another mentorship for tech writers. So if you know any junior tech writers or someone that wants to be a tech writer and wants to contribute to Prometheus, we would love to get help, and you'll even get paid for that.
Thank you. All right, so it should be lunch in 5 minutes.